plays. And I said the one cosplay that I remember, this is going back like 6 or 7 years. I said somebody cosplayed as Snowflame, and he goes, I don't know who Snowflame is. And I was like, he was a very controversial Teen Titans villain who was in one issue, and he got powerful from snorting cocaine. And Ray's like, are you serious? I said, I swear to God, I'm not making this up.
Yep.
He was like, yeah. So I was like, yep. I said, somebody cosplayed as Snowflame. I want to say it was like maybe Comic-Con 2013, 2014, wow. Somewhere around there. Yep. Yep.
Nice.
That was a thing that happened. I was there. I saw it. And he only was, understood and picked up by about like maybe a handful of people. I didn't even know who he was until somebody like yelled out Snowflame, and he yelled out something about cocaine. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? Look, oh shit. Oh, this is real. Oh, okay. And I told Ray, cause he was like, are there any cosplays you want to do that you haven't done? Like what's your next character? And I said, you know me. I said, I want to go obscure.
Yeah.
I said, a dream. This is like out there, but I want to go as Lego Darth Vader. I'm gonna see if you can pick up where I'm going with this. Lego Darth Vader with a name tag says, my name is Jeff, and carrying around a lunch tray, a wet lunch tray.
Oh my gosh.
Just to see who would understand that reference.
Boy. You're okay.
Darth Vader, so Lord Vader of Cheam. I am your boss. Oh, you're Mr. Stevens from catering. That's Jeff Vader, he is. No, I'm not Jeff Vader. I am Darth Vader. I should kill you. I can kill you with a thought, with the force, which is powerful within me. I should kill you with this tray. This one is wet. This one is wet. This one is wet. This one is wet. Did you try them in a rainforest?
Yep. That is. At this point, what percentage of the planet gets that, man?
I don't know. But whichever percentage of the planet does get that reference, I want to be their friend. Like that's the thing. Because again, that's who I am as a person. If I'm putting that out there and you pick up on it, then like you're one of the 7 people that I'm cool with. That's like cool.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, that's my thought process. Is I wanna go as Lego Darth Vader with Jeff. All right. Let me mute Facebook. Let me just pull up all the stuff. I see Seth is he's in the chat, but he's trying to jump in.
He was on the recording channel, but he was muted. So
yeah, he was muted. Oh. We don't worry that people will get our jokes. We trust the right ones will. MST3K writers. Well, hey. Good company then. For MST3K folks. Yep. Just mute that there so I got all of the video up. Also, hey Andy. And hello, Seth, who is in the general chat trying to listen. Because the thing is, like the recording channel, I think the settings are such that anybody can connect, but only we can speak.
Right.
Yeah, everyone can. I'm changing it now. So let's see. Everyone can view channel. Everyone can connect. But only the moderators, or if I give you the guest role, then they're allowed to speak. And even then, I only allow you to speak just because I don't want it mucking anything up. All right, so I got Audition up and running.
Yep.
And I am starting
Yep.
recording. So,
All right.
ready in 3, 2. Are you recording now?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Should have asked that first. 3, 2, 1. Right.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. Seth is in the recording channel now, so Seth can hear us. Hello, Seth.
Hey. Hi.
We can say whatever we want about you, and you can't say anything back.
When my hand goes up, your mouth stays shut. Sorry, that's a Miz reference.
Oh, the Miz? Okay, I thought it was going to be like The Rock or something.
It also sounds like something The Rock would say, but
It absolutely is something that The Rock would say. Anyway, all right, got my Google document up.
Same.
And let's do this in 3, 2. Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 96, Strangers in a Strange Land. But Anthony, I thought the next episode was Mental Health Avengers. Unfortunately, due to a couple of different circumstances, several of the Avengers had to reschedule, and Doc and I, having less than 12 hours to then prep an episode, said, well, we can't do Black Adam on this kind of short notice because character-specific episodes, we'd like to do a sufficient amount of research in. Obviously, writing the skit takes a long period of time, and we said we can't really pull that off in like a 12-hour time span, especially given that I know Doc was working. So we decided to just bump up the theme episode of Strangers in a Strange Land. So this way, at least we give you some content. We didn't want to leave you hanging. We didn't want to give you nothing. So you'll take this and you'll like it. I'm kidding. But seriously, this is what we're giving you. So you're welcome.
Hope you enjoy it. Yeah.
We do sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode. Quick reminder to vote in the award show. You've got a couple weeks left. capesonthecouch.live/nominees. We appreciate those of you who have voted already. And we're going to be, posting like crazy on social media between now and the next couple of weeks when we get ready to announce the winners for episode 100, which we are still very, very excited about. So this is a theme episode as picked by our present level patron, Matt. And he basically said that stories about characters that have been displaced in either time or space are innumerable. And these are characters that may get suddenly warped or transported to another place, characters that get shifted through time, characters that go into suspended animation and wake up decades or centuries or millennia later, and they are in an unfamiliar location. They may not necessarily speak the language. They certainly won't understand the culture and the lifestyle of wherever it is that they are present. And so he said, obviously, let's start with I think we can all agree, the most famous version, the most famous one of these stories is Superman, the last son of Krypton. Obviously, left the exploding planet, sent to Earth as a baby in a rocket ship. Now, I will say that one of the key distinctions there is that Superman grew up on Earth. So it wasn't a situation where he knew Krypton and then left.
Whoa. Slow down. Which character are you talking about? I haven't heard of him.
Womp womp.
Sorry.
So that's fine. So I think that there is a key difference there with Superman. Now, obviously, so many stories have been written about the fact that he longs for the home that he never knew. He always searches out and feels a kinship with any of the rogue Kryptonians that he does manage to find, which pre-crisis, there were dozens of folks that managed to survive the destruction of Krypton. Post-crisis, excuse me. Post-crisis, they've kept a little better handle on those numbers, but still, it's a culture, it's his homeland, but he's never known that. And I know that we're certainly going to get into some of the real world analogs later on, but that I think plays a major role in part of the development of his character. So I'll leave you to speak on Superman.
Okay, so
I'm sure you've never thought about Superman. I'm just totally throwing you under the bus here, but
no,
if you can cobble together some thoughts about this obscure character, please help us.
Well, it depends on which version of the story you're talking about. Are you talking about the child that had the all-American background and therefore had the type of support and love that allowed him to explore his powers as they developed, and therefore it's just simply a coming-of-age story, which many people can relate to? Or are we talking about the one that pretty much later on discovers all of this stuff about things that he never even thought were a part of his background, his history, his previous culture that gave him all these amazing abilities and powers only because he was displaced in the first place? That's pretty rough. Just recognizing that everything is an artificial construct for you. You got to grow up, quote unquote, normally, but that pretty much was an illusion. So the good news is he's able to do this from a position of power. I mean, literally a position of power. He has superpowers. He has all the things that he would need to adapt and create his Fortress of Solitude, which literally was his own way of developing coping mechanisms for the idea that there's so many things he doesn't understand. He can do it at his own time and pace. So it's out of the public eye. He has supportive parents that allow him to explore this even as an adult. So this is what I'm getting at with all of this is the things that lead Superman for many people, not me, but for many other people, to be considered at times a boring character because it seems like everything was handed to him on a silver platter. But I would counter that by saying he got everything that could potentially go right handed to him, and he didn't mess it up. Because there are plenty of people, plenty of characters that have a lot of positive things happen, and they somehow manage to squander it. So I'm going to give him some credit there. And since we have so many characters, I'm not going to spend so much time just on him because this is something that I've always felt as a comic book fan, I've always had to defend. In other words, why do I, of all people, like Superman so much? And that's still true. He's one of my favorite characters overall. And I love reading Superman books. I love the storylines, mainly because I feel like sometimes you don't have to overthink it. If you are put in a situation where things were totally changed out of your control, but they were for the better, just ride it. Just go with it. Don't mess it up first. As a doctor, first thing, do no harm. So I appreciate that. I like keeping that part simple. So even if people don't totally understand where he's coming from, even at the times he's been able to explain parts of it, whether or not it's relevant, he does it usually with a certain level of diplomacy that allows people to at least understand. After all, a lot of people blame Krypton for plenty of horrible things too. And rightfully so, because there have been plenty of other beings or situations that were based on Kryptonian technology or Kryptonian characters or whatever that led to a lot of destruction. And him being the one, quote unquote, oh, this is gonna really get some flames here, one of the good ones, that can be a little, just a little bit irritating if it's done in the wrong context. And he still usually handles it with a lot of charm. So yes, if this sounds like a slobber fest for Superman, then so be it. I'll gladly be that guy.
I understand the Superman hate, but it just kind of seems misplaced. Like, oh, he's boring because you can do everything. And so, yeah, there have been some dull stories, and he obviously can be incredibly overpowered and single-handedly save, everybody if the story is written poorly. But if you focus in and you hone in on the whole notion of he can't save everybody, but he wants to, and he feels that he needs to, and you focus on the human aspect, the I hate to say this, the Clark Kent side of him, you focus on those, that's such a compelling story. So it's just, like I said, it's one of those things that just again, it's in the hands of a capable writer. But
Yeah.
I think for a character like Superman, you're going to get the best writer among the best writers in the DC bullpen working on Superman because he's Superman. You can't, you don't want to give some third rate, like, oh yeah, you've never written comics before. Yeah, go ahead, go tackle Superman. Like, no. Superman is not a character that you want to get your feet wet on. Or maybe you do. I don't know. It certainly seems to be how they do it in the movie versions. Anyway, shots fired.
Mm-hmm.
The other, so moving on, Matt gave us like half a dozen or more examples,
Sure.
so we can just keep going.
Yeah.
Another very, very famous example and a character that is like literally near and dear to my heart. For those of you watching the live stream, I'm currently wearing a Captain America hoodie. And for those of you longtime listeners know, I have the Captain America shield tattooed on my shoulder blade. Cap is a character that, Cap and Moon Knight, they're my 1A and 1B, like on any given day, depending on how I'm feeling and how nice I am. If you ask me who my favorite character is, that's how you'll get your answer. Captain America, A Man Out of Time, a story and a notion that has evolved and taken more prominence as the years have gone on, and was really focused on in the Ultimate Universe. Ultimate Cap was way more a man out of time, a product of the 40s than 616, where he's where 616 Cap, the version of him being a man out of time is, oh, he's just nice and old fashioned and he likes to listen to old music and watch old movies. Ultimate Cap is a man of the 40s in that he's a little bigoted. He's, a little misogynistic. He's got those edges to him where Ultimate Cap is basically your kind of racist grandpa or your racist uncle, like the drunk older family member that's a little embarrassing at family events. And that's sort of how he was written because, they want to make him edgy, whatever. Damn you, Mark Millar. But the man out of time aspect is something that I think was done very well in the movies and has really been focused on heavily in some of the newer comics, because obviously where he's frozen is a fixed point in time. Where he wakes up gets longer and longer. So when he was initially woken up, it was 20 years, which is a long time, but 20 years now, in the first Avenger, for example, it's, almost 70 years.
Right.
That's literally an entire generation, an entire lifetime practically.
Yeah.
That can really mess with you.
So the part that really gets me with that is, and I remember seeing this on Facebook once, Tony Stark calls him out on this and says, shouldn't you just be in total awe of this typewriter with a window of light? The idea that certain things in society have advanced beyond what a person's expectations are can be fascinating. So we can do this for ourselves. I don't know, even as a little kid, if I thought for sure that we would have the capability of me talking to my best friend through a computer screen with a microphone and having it broadcast live for literally anybody in the world to hear without even blinking. It's instant. And the quality of it is the equivalent of what used to cost thousands of dollars in just a few decades ago. You would be able to retire on the amount of money that our equipment would cost, in theory, to do this, if we even wanted to have the video scan to go with it. I'm just talking about the audio. So that's just the part that I think of, because that's the stuff I like to think about. For someone like Captain America, who is a soldier, who, depending on how it's depicted, had a love interest, who at the time didn't have a chance to do the things that in that generation you would expect to be the most important things: developing a family, raising a child, having that classic lifestyle where you get your pension after 20 years and kind of just retire fat and happy. That's me being stereotypical. I'm not saying everybody retires that way and all of that. I'm just painting that picture because that actually is what is sold to people at that generation's time, that type of propaganda, which can be a good thing, but also can lead to some broken expectations. And let's go with the practical side of this just for a little bit. A guy like that, you end up in a world where certain people that you thought really didn't deserve a certain level of respect now have that, or have more of it than they did before. The roles that other people in society play, the role that women play, the expectation that what you used to say, you could say in confidence behind closed doors and not worry about what's going to happen next. All of those things. Yeah. You don't turn off your impulses if you've been doing that for most of your adult life. And let's be honest, depending on how it's depicted, once again, soldiers are not old men. Soldiers are young. Soldiers are still really in the development of finding themselves while trying to survive. So you put that together and then say, okay, take all of that, make sure that you integrate yourself back into society with absolutely zero guidance on what's expected of you. You're going to lean on the things that allowed for your survival in the first place. We've seen that with numerous characters. We've gone over that ad infinitum. And then you have to deal with the pushback. And the pushback isn't something that you can just ignore. You can't shove it under the rug and say, oh, well, I know who I am and I have a certain position of power. I can get away with it. Oh, what's whistleblowing? Oh, what is, there's actual consequences now to things that previously there weren't. That's rough. It's like, I'll make an analogy. It's like a comedian that is pushing the boundary of their time, and that line just keeps getting moved over and over and over. So nowadays they're going to get criticism for things that before weren't criticized. It's difficult for that person to understand because they say, well, wait a minute, you were laughing hysterically at what I did. Now it's not acceptable. Why is that? Some comedians understand it.
You're talking cancel culture.
Yeah, I am. I just didn't want to say that because I think that's way too pejorative.
I understand your point, but by the same token, I think that it's just at least nominally a notion that folks can understand. And you have, comedians, actors, politicians, folks of all walks of life that used to be able to say things, quote unquote. Oh, now you're taking away my right to be able to say stuff. And that's a common refrain we hear from, dare I say, older generations, older individuals. You used to be able to make jokes about stuff. Well, it was punching down. And now the folks that were getting punched are standing up and now they're looking you in the eye. It's not that funny anymore. So I think from that standpoint, there's a sea change in how we view things. And
yeah, I think the emotional side to this, though, is the idea of how do you respond? Do you fight or do you acquiesce? And I think human nature dictates that when you are threatened and there's no place to run because it's not an actual threat you can run from, then you fight. So I don't blame a person in that sense if they feel like things are displaced or things are quote, not what they used to be, unquote, then you're gonna have an backlash. You're gonna be angry. And it's not just that you're angry about the situation, it's a personal insult. It is something that actually strikes most people to their very essence of who they are. Like, how dare you not accept me? So then it becomes this very ironic twist that often a society that is trying to learn to be accepting of others is less accepting of someone who was bigoted or misogynistic or whatever in the first place. It's just a fascinating twist that if we ignore it, then I think we start creating the seeds of significant distrust and significant rage enough that people like that can really do some damage to themselves and to others. And I've
Well,
definitely seen that.
oh, I think we're seeing it in this country right now at this point in time. We're seeing the tolerance paradox is really what it comes down to. The fact that I am not going to tolerate intolerance, and I'm not going to tolerate you being intolerant of other people. Like, we can have civil discussions and we can have debates on things of political natures. But if the political things you're trying to debate come down to human rights or certain things that are considered, imperative to live and to survive and to thrive, folks are not going to tolerate that. And they're not going to say, oh, well, you want to put tax dollars towards this program instead of this one. Like, that's a reasonable debate. But if it comes down to, I don't think that this, group of minority individuals should have these certain civil rights, that's not something that can be really debated, at least civilly.
Right.
Same thing with the jokes, the humor. And that's the thing that what it comes down to me is, what are you trying to fight for? Are you trying to fight for the right to use hateful language? Are you trying to fight for the freedom to say, to call, disadvantaged communities a disrespectful name? Like, what are you trying to fight for? And why do you want it? Why do you want to say these things so badly? Why do you want to do these things so badly? To me, that's the greater question. That's the deeper question, because I know the overwhelming majority of these people who are fighting for this stuff have never pondered that question. But if you sincerely ask them that, say, why do you want to say it? Is it just because you want the freedom to say it? Because freedom to act without regard for consequence is not growth. It is not maturity. That is, my 17-month-old child does that. He acts without regard for consequence because he's a toddler. He literally doesn't know any better. If you're an adult and you're still saying, well, I should be able to do what I want, consequences be damned, you're stick your ass in a diaper then, because you're acting like a child. From a developmental standpoint, that's just how I see it. So I know we've gotten completely off the original topic of displaced out of time, but
I'll bring back the idea of impulsive emotional responses to extreme stimuli. And for Captain America, that's relevant because all the things that you just mentioned and the things that I brought up directly as well, I could picture the immediate response being, I literally fought so that millions of people didn't die. I literally fought people that thought that certain human beings shouldn't be in existence, and I never once had that thought in my head. So how dare you start to talk about nuance of those situations when I've actually put in a greater sacrifice than most people have that have ever been alive. So I'm just pointing out that there is an area that tends to get marginalized, ironically, if we allow for our own initial emotional responses to override someone else's. That's all I was getting at with that. So
fair enough.
That part, I think, is well done in comics in general, because without that side of it, you can't have relatable villains. The whole point of most well-done stories is not just that you're fighting an evil, you're fighting a justified evil, usually. You may not know what it is at the start, and you may not agree with it at the end, but most good stories will at some point kind of make you raise your eyebrow a little bit, go, just give that, right. just give that pause. So someone like Captain America, it's clear which side he's on, the main thing that people are saying is, can we just soften some of these edges a little bit? And his point is, well, this hard edge is what kicks ass.
True enough. So let's move on. Another character that Matt had suggested after that incredibly heavy discussion, and we haven't even gotten into some of the real world analogs yet, y'all. Like, we've got some stuff that's gonna, the Mental Health Avengers was going to be a heavy episode, so we just decided to replace that one with a different, same heaviness, different topic. A character that I had never heard of before, Shining Knight, Sir Justin. He was a member of King Arthur's court.
Yeah, I'm not gonna pretend like I don't know about this.
He was revived in 1941 and joined the Seven Soldiers of Victory. These are characters that were too obscure for the JSA, except for Green Arrow and Speedy. He was like the leader of the group. And then there were all of these other DC characters because the JSA was doing really well. So they said, oh, we need to come up with, like, every hero needs to be in a team now. So let's do Seven Soldiers of Victory. Sure, let's go with that. So Shining Knight was a member of King Arthur's court who ended up suspended in animation and then revived in 1941. So now we're not talking a couple of decades, we're talking centuries.
Yeah.
By the way, Andy in Discord says Doc isn't watching Stargirl, because that's right. I did forget to mention that Shining Knight is a cast member in Stargirl. So yeah, neither of us are watching Stargirl. I'll put it that way.
Good to know when I start watching things again. Wow. That period of time, that's that I don't even know where to go, because I know there's another one coming up, but at least I know which one that is. When you get beyond a century, now you're talking about complete differences in societal constructs. So the idea that, forget about, I know sometimes we talk about things like slavery or whatever. Like, no. We're saying, like, yeah, you can own a house and no, you're not a serf, and no, it really is its own country, even though our country has states. Like, no, it is uniform, and no, we don't have fiefdoms. No, it's all of it. Like, just this whole, yeah. And by the way, all the agriculture is pretty much, mass production as opposed to you making your own food. So all of those things, I don't even know how a person can really process that level of change that quickly. I just picture someone like that immediately getting detained or arrested because they're not following the basic laws, because those types of laws didn't exist. The only thing I could think of that would translate over very quickly besides violence is taxes. The idea, like, oh yeah, you still got to pay those. If you earn money, you got, you're going to be paying your share. Everything else may be just a completely different idea. I mean, human interaction is still the same. Language. How do you break that barrier? Even if the person's speaking English, it's not the same thing.
That's true. It is a very
different my goodness,
version of English.
Yeah. So you're basically learning everything almost from an infancy level. You have to learn a new language. You have to learn the proper clothing. You have to, all of it, just every single bit from the start. Man, oh man, I don't even know how you begin to bridge that gap except by trial and error. I mean, we're talking Skinner here. Trial, error, accidental success. If you're wearing your knight armor, then you get some weird looks in cosplay, but you're not, you're not going to be in trouble for it. When you wonder what all this weird stuff is that people are using, and you realize that it's actually liquid soap, and that's what's expected of you, and you're supposed to use it every day, and the expectations of hygiene and grooming even are that much different. I've actually, this came up at work a couple of days ago about a patient, because the poor person just simply wouldn't shower. He's that ill, that depressed, that psychotic. and we basically just beg him to do that, just that basic thing. And I couldn't help but think, this is what society was like centuries ago. I mean, you had water, you had things that could be used for the sake of masking scents, but not. You didn't have deodorants. You didn't have those types of powerful detergents in that sense. So yes, you could I prefer to say you can decontaminate yourself, but you're not going to get that quote unquote fresh, clean feeling. The expectation of what things smell like. We're used to the smell of exhaust, of diesel, of lots of highly carbon emitting processes other than fire itself. That person wouldn't be used to that. They might think it's something demonic. That person is used to the smell of nature, of animals, of all of those things, which still exist in our world, but it's not the same. Even if you go back to horse-drawn carriages and compare that to what we experience now, you take a city dweller and bring them out to the country, and it's like, what does that smell? It's like, yeah, that's manure. That's what it's supposed to smell like. All of these things, just the basic senses in every category can be completely thrown off. And I'm not so sure there's an easy fix to that. There's an easy way to overcome that except through just the brutal experience overall. So I could picture someone going through some really bad acute stress reactions from that.
Yeah. Well, Matt says if Shining Knight didn't have the rest of the 7 soldiers helping him acclimate to the 900 years he missed while he was frozen, well, he'd probably be Exodus, an absolute fanatic clinging to his centuries-old sensibilities because his identity would collapse without them. So that's a good segue into the next one. Exodus, born in 12th century Paris, sealed away in the tomb by Apocalypse, who we did an episode on. So there's the more villainous type side to the sort of time displacement. I know we've mostly been talking about heroes, but it happens to villains as well.
Yeah. Yep. And at least when you look at it from a villain standpoint, at least with heroes, we understand the idea of this is a society that I don't know. Either how do I make it better or how do I bring it back to something that I understand? From a villain standpoint, it's more not just how do I bring it back to something I understand, but how do I just go ahead and destroy it? And that is a much different way to look at things because you're potentially just looking on an island. I'm glad that Matt mentioned the idea that at least when you know that there are other people that are trying to help you understand, you can get the sense of human connection that you wouldn't otherwise. But if you're left alone, then it's up to that person to develop their own construct. And no offense to everyone out there, because I'm throwing myself in this as well, we as humans don't necessarily create fantastic individual constructs without some sort of reinforcement, or be it positive or negative. Without that, we go in some wild directions. If you've ever seen quote unquote feral people, it's very strange what our own brains can come up with when we don't have anything to bounce ideas. We don't have anyone to bounce ideas off of. So someone like Exodus is incredibly dangerous. They don't even necessarily need a filter for what they're thinking because they have already come to the conclusion that they're right and the world is wrong. Apocalypse comes to that conclusion as well, but I mean, and most villains do, but this is different because at least with them, you get the background as to why they would feel that way in the first place. When someone is this displaced, most people aren't even given the opportunity to try to understand. It's just simply, no, F you. just a much more, to take the psychodynamic side, a much more id-driven response, because there is no other response that's going to be acceptable. I really, I'll admit, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this, which says a lot about me too. How would we feel? We're going to have real world analogs, but from the time standpoint, I mean, true like time travel standpoint, I have no idea how I would process so many of these things. And I'm talking moving forward, not going backwards, because so many time stories deal with you go back in time with the knowledge that you have now. So it becomes a huge advantage because you can try and manipulate things with what you already know. I'm saying the opposite. Thanks, Biff. I'm saying the opposite. The idea that regardless of if it's forwards or backwards, you don't have that actual pre-existing information. You are the worst kind of blank slate. That to me is incredibly crippling. And for some it would draw inaction, but for someone like Exodus, it's overaction, it's reaction, it's intense, direct, brutal action, whatever you want to call it. It's bad.
Yeah. He's that's bad. So we're gonna completely flip it. Then we're gonna go from we're gonna go back to the heroes and talk about Martian Manhunter, because Matt says when the writers care to remember that he's there. Excuse me. Shots fired by Matt. Many stories have been told about how detached, aloof, and distant he seems despite having been on Earth for centuries. The DCAU did a great character arc as it was coming to an end about how human connections are very difficult for him to understand. It's a foreign concept for a telepath to fathom deceit and hiding one's true feelings. And so he doesn't even bother trying. This, of course, does nothing for his ever-present loneliness. And so I think, John is a great example of a character who just cannot understand at his core some of the cultural distinctions and things that we do here on Earth, irrespective of country. The notion of, again, lying and hiding oneself, which I find interesting given that John can, shapeshift. So I just find that interesting from a theoretical standpoint. But that has a lot of interesting source for a good story if mined properly.
Yeah. Just give me a moment, because there is a book that I want to reference, and I don't remember the author. I think it's relevant. If I reference a book, I always want to make sure the author gets credit.
No, that's fine. And we can certainly add reference to it in the show notes. Seth and Andy are speaking German to each other in Discord, and also talking about Stargirl. So we've got a nice little side conversation going on.
All right. So there's a book I want to reference. The name is Consilience by Edward O. Wilson, and it literally means jumping together. So the idea is that you have knowledge, technology, basic understanding of how the universe works, all of those things. There is a way to construct that, and we do it automatically as humans. It's not something that we sit down, unless you're a philosopher. I mean, you really can, but even as a toddler and from childhood on, you automatically start to develop your own sense of everything in the universe and how everything connects. Someone like Martian Manhunter, more than likely as a sentient being, went through a similar experience, but it is a falsehood to say that a sentient being that is not human will automatically have the same process and the same conclusions that we do. We as a species are incredibly egotistical and self-centered. We have the idea that the way we see things is how everything else must function, only at a, quote, better or worse level. And that is really limiting in how we're going to be able, if we ever do, I don't know about this, and I'm sure people can have their own thoughts. If we ever encounter, quote unquote, smart life with aliens, whatever that means. And I agree wholeheartedly with Matt that there is a huge part of that that sometimes gets touched on. I don't think nearly enough or as in depth as it could be, because I think people who actually are much more in the comedy side of things, who write comic strips and things like that, depending on what you find online, do a much better job of the idea that what we do is absurd. Many of the things we do are absurd, and we survive in spite of it. And if we had someone that at least could bridge the gap a little bit to explain it to us why it's absurd, then maybe we would be able to bridge the gap with them to figure out, okay, well, what's so bad about what we do? Or honestly, there may be some things that we do way better than other species would. I don't know. All of this is speculation, but the fact that we're able to speculate on it allows for a character like Martian Manhunter to exist. And it's why we do what we do. It's why we search the cosmos. It's why we want to know if there's other life out there outside of this planet. Because we know, like deep down, that there may be something different. We have no idea what it is. And all we can do is come up with the best possible construct for ourselves. The reason why I reference the book Consilience is because it actually references other species of animals and plants, and it points out their goals couldn't possibly be the same as ours. So someone like Martian Manhunter, I know it sounds trivial to say he wouldn't understand. I think it's more along the lines of, would he even try? We would have to be fascinating enough to him to make it worth his while. It would be the equivalent of, I'm gonna reference Manhattan on this one. It would be the equivalent of saying, "Wow, I'm no longer around any other humans, and I guess I better learn how to function with these termites." It might be that profound, but we will never know because we don't even come close to it. Because he has a form that's so similar to ours that we make the perhaps short-sighted assumption that his process of everything in reality is very close to ours. And he may just be ingratiating us by saying, yeah, okay, fine, whatever.
Good point. It could be a sort of species-wide uncanny valley, perhaps.
Yeah.
Interesting. Never really considered that. The last one that Matt mentioned, because again, we could go on and on for literal hours on this. The last one that he mentioned is, Andy, in defense of humanity, we did invent Oreos. That got his attention.
Touche.
This is why I love our fan community that interacts with us during the shows, because they throw out stuff like this. The last character that I want to talk about, or that Matt mentioned, is Sleepwalker, who I know just had a very short run finish up in Marvel. So Sleepwalker, for those of you, I'm sure the overwhelming majority of you have never heard of the character or not really familiar with it. Sleepwalker is a character from a realm called the Mindscape. And without getting into too much of the details, it's entirely subconscious. The world changes based on the subconscious desires and thoughts of the inhabitants. So everything is just completely wacky. And Sleepwalker himself as a character ends up bonded to this guy. I think his name is Richard. And so Sleepwalker only comes out when Richard is asleep, hence the name Sleepwalker. And so he comes from this entirely other world. And so to him, Earth is strange. So that was an interesting flip on the sort of displaced, because normally it's an Earthling goes to a foreign place and we can't understand their cultures and customs. Here it's this character who comes from a place that Matt describes as Lovecraftian, to give you a general idea of how messed up the mindscape is.
Yep.
They come here and now they're going, what? Things are, consistent.
Right.
Like as Matt puts it, as messed up as the mindscape is, it's home.
Yep.
So he understands it. Earth, with its consistency, quote unquote, is foreign to him.
Yeah.
That's
So
a twist. That's the other side of the coin.
yeah, and since I already did my deep existential thoughts with Martian Manhunter, I originally was going to start saying stuff like that for Sleepwalker, but I don't want to hit that exact same note again. But the idea of the subconscious playing a role in how we deal with the conscious world, I think, is very relevant to this. And without getting into a lot of that other really weird stuff, if anybody is familiar with this character, to be honest with you, it's the type of stuff and artwork that I'm not a fan of, only because it really creeps me out. But my point is, when you're in a relationship or you develop over time, especially with family or with friends or with school or all those things, it becomes your normal. That is your base point of how you're going to view things for the rest of your life. First, it's your parents or whatever support that you had as an infant. Then it's your peers, and your teachers and other authority figures. And then after that, it's a lot of what you decide to do from that standpoint, unless they have a real thumb on you and you continue in one of those other constructs. Either you continue to go to school for much longer and you have professors and other peers that you're going to be working with, or your career, or family expectations. You stay at home or you go back home and you're helping out, or they are helping you, whatever. The idea of self-determination, what you do from those original points, as we know, can have a major influence. And so if your environment was chaotic, then that is what you expect the world to be. And subconsciously, you may look to recreate that if you're placed in a situation where you don't see it happening. I'm going to, once again, I don't know why I have all these references today. I'm going to reference Christopher Titus, who is a comedian. I'm trying my best not to say a hilarious comedian that has made me lose my breath, because that's how I feel about it. But I don't care. You don't have to like him or not. My thing is, when he actually, when you have when he had a TV show briefly, the very first episode was, I am in an incredible, loving relationship with my girlfriend. How do I destroy it? And he's basically being a narrator for all of the weird, just bad decisions that he makes that put so much strain on their relationship. And then he impulsively then asks her to marry him, and she says yes. And it's like, wait, what? That's not how that's supposed to work. And that's the thing. His point, and he did give hints at it. Once again, humor can release so much in the soul that regular discourse can't. The point is that to him it made perfect sense, even if to nobody else it did. It was something that he knew was going to work out because that's the way it always had before. And so anything else would have been more of a failure than just having a normal, loving relationship that didn't have all of these arguments. Is that right? I'm not going to claim that it's right, but I am going to say that there are many, many people in this world who do operate that way. So recognizing that can make such a big difference in terms of how people deal with work environments or dealing with other people and in other situations. Basically, the idea is like, we try not to judge when people are dealing with this stuff, but it can lead to people shutting others off if you're not even trying to understand some base level of where they're coming from with this. It's an exploration. It's experimentation for that person. But what we may view it as is trying to destroy or disrupt what seems to be a perfectly working system. So when you have that disconnect, you're going to end up with a lot more turmoil naturally. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and call it what it is: projective identification. That is the idea that you already have an idea what someone else is supposed to be. So you do everything, whether intentionally or subconsciously to create scenarios where that person is going to act how you already expected them to. So if I think Anthony is an absolute jerk, I will talk to him in a certain way that he's going to lash out at me and he's going to say hurtful things. And I'm going to say, see, I was right. He's a jerk. That's not a healthy thing to do. Usually it's not considered a healthy coping mechanism. But when we're talking about someone who's already involved in chaos, that is the type of coping mechanism that may come out in spades.
Wow. Well, the important takeaway here is Doc does not think that I'm a jerk.
If you say so.
Touche. We also had a suggestion in the Discord that Flash Gordon fits this topic as well.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. You know what? We can. I'm saying if you're gonna reference Flash Gordon, I mean, we can do John Carter. You know, I mean, there's that's the problem. There's plenty.
And that's what I mean. Is I was literally only going on the ones that Matt gave us because we could just throw a dart and hit dozens of characters. But I do want to save some time for some of these real world analogs, which we'll just jump right into then. And so the obvious one, and the first one that Matt referenced, is refugees, immigrants, exiles. These are people that have left their home countries for any number of reasons, and I'm certainly not going to speculate or comment on the validity or reasons why, but these are people who have left their homes and take up residence in a new country. They likely don't speak the language. They may not understand. They certainly don't understand all the customs. This has happened to millions of people in our world, in our lifetime. This has happened to millions of people. They real life Superman. I mean, think about people that, you know, where are you from? Yugoslavia. There is no Yugoslavia anymore. There is no Czechoslovakia. There is no Soviet Union. These people are literally, their homes are, the physical home may be there, but the boundaries have changed. The country that they grew up in, the home that they knew, is no longer there. They are literally homeless from that standpoint. It's
Jewish people during and after the Holocaust that had to relocate to different areas of the world, you know, which led to the shift in Israel and you know, all the Middle East situation there. I mean, just literally just the history of the planet. Okay, let's just say that. The history of the planet. All right. So the idea here, of course, is these are drastic changes for anyone to deal with. Adaptation, how much it almost becomes a sliding scale. How much are you willing to give up of yourself in order to gain something from someone else? If you consider it to be a gain, you know, do you intentionally learn the new language as quickly as possible? Do you hold on to the other one and you know, rely on a different generation or people around you to translate? Do you, you know, what do you do for your life's purpose? I hate saying it that way because when I say life's purpose, I'm referring to vocation, the idea that you're doing something that you consider to be worthwhile in the world. That takes a huge backseat to the idea of just surviving and getting a job, starting a business, doing all those things that allow you to simply have a roof over your head. Your basic needs come into question. That is not something that many people have been dealing with. Having said that, there is a huge population where it's the opposite, where literally this is the first time in a while that they've had a roof over their head because it's been taken away. So this is the type of thing where the whole point is this is a drastic change in what you know and what you're used to. And once that happens, is that adaptation going to be slow? Is it going to be fast? Is it going to be anxiety provoking? By the way, that last one, overwhelmingly yes. But what do you do with that tension? What do you do with that anxiety? Is it going to be a productive anxiety? where you actually are trying to find ways to continue to survive or even thrive? Or is it going to be much more of an internalized, almost a somatization sometimes? Or forget somatization, the number of people that have developed illnesses because of change in environment, or poor circumstances. All those things come into play as well. So and unfortunately, I wish I could say that this was uniform. Like, this is the refugee playbook. Like, this is what you do and this is how you process it. Like, there's no such thing. So that creates some tension in and of itself, because sometimes we cling to the idea, like, especially in obvious bias here as someone in the United States of America, the idea that, okay, but you can overcome that. You can do something with that, or you have an opportunity. And it's true, you do. But it's not universal. It's not uniform. And so such a wide standard deviation of response and results is something that's very difficult for people who have not gone through it to wrap their heads around. And not only that, the singularity of the experience. One refugee's experience is not automatically going to be the same as another refugee's experience. So even when people are talking about it, they may not even be united in what they want to say about it or how they want to change their situation. Some communities end up becoming, and I'm not saying this as a pejorative, I'm saying as an observation. When people reference Chinatown in a large urban area, most people know what that means, or Little Italy, or any of these things. The idea is you took a stance on a culture that you were allowed to ingratiate into a much larger overall society that has some benefit, both for the people that are experiencing it personally and the people that are witnessing it and having some interactions on the outside. It can be. We also have, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to get you too choked up. You also have some situations that are just not that way. And it's more like you're treated almost less than human, or just flat out less than human. And just a wide range there. I wish I feel like I don't have the words to describe just how intense these types of situations are. But based on the reactions of a lot of people, one way or another, it's clear that it's one of those humanity crises that we never ignore. We may sweep under the rug. We may subconsciously say we don't want to talk about it, but we never ignore it because it's something that affects everyone around the world.
And that's something that I think has been brought to the forefront of discussion a lot more lately, at least that I've seen, certainly by, I'm not trying to make this a generational thing, but a lot of younger folks are much more open to the idea of treating people as humans first, regardless of the circumstances of your birth, where you were born, etc. That I'm not going to treat you any differently, and I don't think you're any less deserving of rights or certain basic human kindness just by virtue of the location of your birth. And so the idea of a global citizenry has taken hold much more as of late than in previous generations. So I don't know, what that means for the future. And because there is an argument to be made, I'm thinking of the line from the first Avenger of, Red Skull, of a future without flags.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that side to it as well, which can be less than ideal.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of that. I won't go that far, but I think another part of this that is relevant is that there's an automatic grieving process. For some people, grief can actually be liberating in its own right. If you are removing something that you consider to be a burden from yourself, that can be an amazing thing. If, though, it is a matter of significant loss of part of your identity, or just the actual loss, like physical losses, family members, direct contacts, monetary stuff, whatever, all of that, there is a grieving process there. And once again, when you're put in a unique and different environment, depending on the circumstances, you don't get the choose your timeline. So it becomes a very pressurized circumstance. I'm not saying that there's a one right way to deal with pressurized grief, but whatever it is, I would like to think that despite doing this for centuries, millennia, it's what humans do. We move. We go from one place to another at some point. And you would like to think that we're getting to the idea that we understand each other, that there is going to be some sort of process of grieving that hopefully allows for healing in the future.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. This being 2020, I'm certainly not going to hold my breath. So moving then to something that's much more distinctive, certainly something that I know neither of us have any direct experience with. Perhaps some of our listeners do. I certainly am not aware of everyone's medical history. Coma patients. Some people are in comas for a couple of days, a couple of weeks. Some people are in comas for years. And this can be another analog to the man out of time, waking up after being in suspended animation for a certain period of time. This is something that we can much more readily understand and rationalize. The idea of you were unconscious for even just a year. To be in a coma for a year and then to wake up, forget about waking up in 2020 and whatever hellscape reality this is, just waking up a year later in any given year to find out how much has changed. That'll throw anybody. I don't care how sound your grasp on reality is. I don't care how solid your interpersonal connections are. If you go to sleep for a year and you wake up, you're going to be messed up. And I say that like, in a somewhat pejorative sense, but there's going to be ramifications there.
Yeah. And it goes back to what I said, like, it doesn't have to be grief, but it is a transition where you're recognizing a loss. So not grief in the traditional sense, although it can be. Heaven forbid it was a person that they were I'm making this up, they were in an accident along with family members or a significant other. Those people didn't survive, but you did. The bottom line is, for many people in those circumstances, from what we have been told by those people that have experienced it, almost all the information that you originally give, like you initially give, like that first day or two, that you're doing your best not to overwhelm them, but people naturally have questions and you do your best to answer them. Many people have an aversion reaction, meaning they just say it's wrong. Like, it's just factually incorrect. Anything that you say, you could give them a glass of water, say that this is water, and they'll say, I don't know what that is, but it's not water. And it's just the idea that if one thing that they knew, as in it was just an automatic, well-known, well-constructed schema in their brain, the moment that they lost consciousness and when they regain consciousness, it is no longer a fact that has been etched in the schema that they've established for themselves. And there is nothing else to reference it to. Meaning, let's go with something real simple. Let's say there was a local election. I'm purposely not trying to go certain places. It's a local election. You were in your hometown. You know who the mayor is. Well, they've been the mayor for the past however many years. They are no longer the mayor. Okay, but I always vote. It's like, well, you didn't have anything to do with it. You didn't vote. Like, no, you don't understand. That's my job. I always vote for the mayor. I didn't vote for the mayor. It's an irrational thought. I didn't vote for the mayor. Therefore, this other person you're saying is the mayor can't be the mayor. They're trying to fill in the gaps incorrectly with other pieces of information to make their own original schema work. There's a defense there. Once that resolves And depending on the person, indiscriminate amount of time. Some people it's very quick. Some people it takes longer. Once that is gone, now you actually go to what's more classical, often classical grief of what on earth is going on. There could be sadness. There could be anger. The idea of bargaining, even like, is there, almost like, can I actually turn back time? Like if I just called up Cher, is that really possible? Like, and
I would sing that song. I would do my Cher impression, but my son is sleeping in the next room, and there's no way I can do it quietly.
Which explains why you didn't take the bait. I really wanted you to. I'm serious, man. I was setting you up so well. Anyway, but even with that, not to mention the other part that I'm going to get to with the next topic, but just knowing that things that you have identified for yourself as being logical are now illogical. That is one of the most deeply disturbing insults that you can give to a person. It's why people with psychotic illness fight so much when it comes to getting a diagnosis, let alone taking medication, let alone, having any of the interventions. For many people, it's because it goes against your very knowledge of who you are as a person. And the idea that you're not processing reality correctly can be a deep insult. So not everybody takes it that way. Some people can take all of this in stride, but it can really change a person's perspective in terms of even their, what we call, a personality. Someone who used to be joking, laughing, smiling, all those things. Not to mention the actual brain changes that may have happened if it was an actual medical condition, of course. But that person may not have things exactly the way they were before, and now everybody else is going to have to adapt to that as well, which goes back to some of the characters that we mentioned. So it's not that far-fetched when some people realize that what they had, heaven forbid, it's a situation where they don't have the monetary things, the financial things that they had before. Like, you can't just keep a house forever. I mean, you're the attorney, you know more about that stuff than I do, but if by a certain period of time, people think it's not going to change and all that stuff is gone, and that's what you were, working for your whole life. That can create some emotional disturbance as well. So there's plenty of opportunity for a person not to have a good experience. Even if it's an example of someone that says like, oh, well, something else in your town is a lot better than it was before. It's like, well, great, but I didn't get to see it. Or I'm really going out. Imagine if your favorite sports team who had never won a championship, they won it. They finally got it done, and you couldn't cheer them on. You weren't there to see the parade. You can see the fact that they got a ring now, but all those things you're going to see them on TV in highlights, but you didn't live it. You didn't experience it live, and it may never happen again.
I think that was a plot point in Lost, that one of the characters was on the island when the Red Sox won their first World Series in 86 years. And he was like, yeah, that obviously you must be joking, because they're the Red Sox, they would never win.
Yeah. Total non sequitur, but actually it is something relevant, because there are some really heart-wrenching stories. The biggest one at this point was the Chicago Cubs. Anybody that knows that story with that team, the specific story I'm thinking of is a gentleman who used to listen on the radio with his dad to every Cubs game, and the night that they won, he was in the graveyard with radio in hand, just so that his dad could hear it.
Yeah.
But imagine if it were a situation, someone's in the hospital, they didn't get to hear it, and then they wake up. So in theory, they have like some level of happiness or positive reaction, but they can't get what we consider to be the true adrenaline, visceral response to a positive event that they would have otherwise. They've been robbed of that. They've been cheated of that. And for many people, that can be pretty painful. Same thing, a family member's born. You have your first grandchild. So many different things. I'm just giving.
I think you came up with a really good idea for a future Capes in Court. Is, we did a world in which death is not permanent. What happens if you get displaced from time, place,
Mm,
what happens to your stuff then?
mm.
Or
Hey,
something along those lines. We could get into
yeah,
the legal ramifications of that.
yeah.
The last thing that I want to talk about, and this is something that again we have seen um, to some extent, and we that was a terrible transition. The last thing that I want to talk about is something that has been again discussed a lot more frequently politically lately, and it is the notion of how we treat prisoners and detainees. If someone is serving a long jail sentence, a long prison sentence, they could be locked up for 20 years and now they're free. The world is completely changing on them. Now, they may have ties to the world. They may understand some of the things that are going on, but they've still spent, you know, decades potentially in a certain particular environment and now are put back out into an unfamiliar world. And
Right.
I know that I'm bringing that up also because I know that was one of the things that we were going to potentially discuss with the Mental Health Avengers.
That's why, yeah, that's why I added it. Let's be real. I added this at the end, and I figured, you know what? Let's give them a taste of how this may go.
So this is some of the stuff that we're going to talk about when we get together with the Avengers, hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so there's an added layer to this because some people may be thinking like, oh, well, is that really that much different than a refugee, or is that much different than, you wake up from a coma and the world is all new and all that? Well, there's one other real obvious point here. It's that society already deemed that you were not worthy to be a part of it for a certain period of time. In other words, you did something that warranted your removal from the rest of the world. And now, because you served your time or you're on parole or whatever, you are now back thrust into that environment, in theory. First of all, let's just go ahead and say what it is. There's a huge stigma. I know we talk about mental health stigma. Well, there is a huge legal stigma when it comes to anyone that has a criminal record. But above and beyond that, it's not just a stigma. There are actual limitations as to what people that were previously convicts can do. Heck, honestly, when it comes to background checks, even if it wasn't something that you went to jail for, your history can really have a huge impact on your employment, on your residence, on just about every part of your life. So it's not just the psychological and all the things that we talked about before with people in new sorry. So it's not just the psychological things that we were talking about with all these other cases, be it the characters or the real world equivalents. It's that part of society actually is working, in theory, a little bit against you. That's an added layer that doesn't really come up that way. You don't have to think whether or not someone doesn't want you to have a job. You can know for a fact that this person doesn't want you to be employed with them, or won't rent to you, or do any of those other things that most people take for granted. So if that's the case, how do you navigate that? Well, thankfully, there is a part of the system that does work with that. But the rest of it is, as we've established with other situations, what do most people do when they have to develop a certain behavior to deal with a circumstance? They rely on their previous behavior. Depending on what that is, that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. If a person feels like they have much more support in a structured environment, 3 meals a day and a bed and a routine, a schedule, knowing that their basic needs are cared for on a regular basis, and now they're thrown into a world where none of those things are guaranteed and, as a matter of fact, may be blocked, they may make a conscious choice. That's what we call, quote unquote, being institutionalized. And it doesn't just have to be prison. It doesn't just have to be jail. It doesn't have to just be the holding cell in your local county. This is true for people that I see. This is true for people that are in hospitals. that I know for a fact the reason that they come back is because they're homeless and they don't know any other way to navigate the system. This can happen to just about anyone that feels like there is no alternative. And that mindset, that learned helplessness, is something that has been in place for so long that we are fighting a very uphill battle when people get out of those circumstances. It's one thing to say, well, now you can do whatever you want, but then to actually look at it case by case and see if that's even close to being true. I'm not pretending to have answers about it, but when we say strangers in a strange land, it's a little worse. I'm not even talking about timelines. I'm not talking about life in prison. I'm not talking. It could be a few months. The whole point is, it's a stranger in a land you know, and doesn't want you.
Well, we're going to hear much more fascinating commentary like that when we do get together with the Mental Health Avengers to talk about mental health and the prison system and the criminal justice system, hopefully in a couple of weeks. But as it stands right now, we're just going to take a short break, plug a couple of shows. When we get back, we will discuss some potential treatment options. Stay tuned.
Damn, man, we're bringing it fire, man.
We are just going super, super fucking heavy here with this one. Like, holy shit. Just Dude, this is nuts.
I can't even, but here's the thing. I can't even pretend. It's not like I had all this in my head ahead of time. Oh my God.
I know. This is the world in which we live.
Look, I don't know if I ever
just run it.
So I don't know if I ever told you this, but pretty much my parents had two main goals for me, like as a kid. Make sure you finish high school and make sure you don't go to jail. I know in theory that sounds like it's setting the bar low, but in all honesty, society-wise, the point was if you can accomplish those two things, then guess what? The world is your oyster. At some point, you're going to be able to do enough that you're going to be okay, whatever that means. So I've always taken that to heart, and I always recognized, I mean, as I developed, obviously their goals for me changed, but I still remember that being like one of the most basic things and realizing that that is not something that I should be taking for granted, you know? So that's why that, especially the prisoner, like that gets to me. When I see patients in jail, when I that electronic clang at Ocean County, like that sound really just evokes a visceral response for me. And I realize like I am at the mercy of everyone in here. As a doctor, it doesn't matter. I am at the mercy of everyone in here. And that absolutely terrifies me. So I do my best not to even see cases in there. Like I've been offered to work there full time and I won't do it. Not because I don't think I could help the prisoners there, but because I know that at least with my mindset, that's going to actually make me feel worse as a human being. And I don't want that.
No, I'm not arguing that point. That you have to be able to comfortably work wherever it is that you know you're going to work, and that if it's not a place that you're going to feel comfortable or that you're going to thrive in, then don't work there. So yeah, I know you wouldn't survive well working in a prison.
I'll put it this way. There's one of two ways that it would go. One way is I end up like just doing, well, I mean, in general, just doing a bad job, but seriously, more like, you know, finding ways to try and get fired, drinking on the job or whatever, like just random stuff that, you know, gets me out of there as quick as possible. Or I become so super organized and get Stockholm syndrome with other patients and, you know, inmates and things like that. And I start like dismantling the system from the inside out, which, you know, gets me in way, way, way more trouble. So it goes one of those two ways. I don't know which.
Yeah, I'm not sure which either. I want to say it would be more the former because that would be less destructive, but I could definitely see the latter happening. And just go, fuck it. Come on, Pookie. Let's burn this motherfucker to the ground.
Oh man. Okay. Anyway.
The secret is animal semen. All right. So, Andy says, learn helplessness is such a terrible, real concept. It's great to hear it being discussed, though. And I'm sure we will get into that. We'll make a note to discuss that more with the Avengers. But yeah, it's already 9:43. So back in 3, 2, and we're back. So treatment in universe. I know for these thematic episodes, it's always difficult for us to provide treatment, especially given how disparate each of these characters and their situations are. But Doc, are you giving me like an indication that you have an idea?
Oh, okay. I got one. Oh, I definitely got one. During the break, especially, I thought about this because so many of these situations, I want them to have someone as a therapist that can be as candid as possible, provide information at a moment's notice, and not have to worry about how other people around the client or patient, how they're going to react. So if you know the show Quantum Leap, I'm Al. I'm basically a hologram level person that is giving all the information, all the feedback I possibly can about what's going on, how to process it, some possible goals and all of that. But nobody else can interact with me. I think that works for time. I think that works for dimension. I think that works for geographic location, all of it. It can be universally applied. It's and to be honest with you, if we ever get to that point, like truly, I would jump at the opportunity to be in that role. Absolutely. That is a dream. That is something that I would love to do with people in situations like this.
Well, okay, then. That is a fascinating concept that I did not see us utilizing, but
wait. I just realized it's not fair for me to just drop a show like that's that old and then use a character that isn't even the main character. So Quantum Leap, the whole point is scientists was working on technology about traveling within, our own times and things like that. But the point is he's getting defunded. He tests out his own experiment, which we know is always a bad idea. And now he's living the lives of other people, usually in the past, and he doesn't have immediate awareness of where he is or who he is. And so he has to rely on the cues of everyone talking to him or doing all that. It comes across usually very more on the comedic side, but there are some drama moments. And Al is actually a person that knows him from his own time and generation, but he's only able to interact with him through a hologram format. So that's the whole point. So for anybody that's not familiar with that show, and it is a good show, please watch it. It's really cool.
Andy says in this example, who's Ziggy? So, all right. So out of universe then, and again, given the disparate nature of the various things that we've discussed, I mean, you're obviously going to treat refugees differently than you're going to treat coma patients, than you're going to treat prisoners and detainees. But are there any common threads that you can draw through the treatment and the experiences that you can utilize in their treatment?
Yeah, absolutely. The key word here is agency. The idea that the person still has the ability to control a situation that otherwise they consider to be uncontrollable. So, in other words, no, I'm not able to fix the situation that led to someone going to another country. No, I can't fix the time that a person lost while they were in a coma. And no, I am not an attorney. I'm not a judge. I can't fix a person's legal situation. Or if they're being released and now they're going through treatment, I can't take back what was done or whether it was fair or unfair, which is a whole other can of worms itself. But I can find what it is within that person's goal system and say, I can be your best advocate from an emotional standpoint. In other words, if your goal is to find a job, okay, I'm clearly not in HR for any departments but I would ask the person, what are some of the things that you would expect that you would need from an intellectual standpoint? In other words, do you feel like you need help communicating in a way that's different than what you're used to? So now what am I talking about? Am I talking about a person that they feel like their job skills are rusty in jail? Or am I talking about someone who feels like their command of the English language isn't as good as they would like it to be? And providing that reassurance and decreasing that anxiety by modeling that and mirroring that in the interaction I have with them as a psychiatrist. In other words, my responses can be incredibly powerful. Instead of saying to someone, "What is that? I didn't understand you." It's, "Wow, you seem to pack a lot of power with your words. You know, can you say that slightly differently so I get an even deeper understanding?" The way that you interact with people can be so crucial in these moments, because subconsciously, if I say, "What? I don't get it," you're invalidating their change in experience. You're literally saying to them, "By the way, I agree. You're not worthy of having these conversations because you don't have the skills." Little things like that I think my field don't do a good enough job in can be so important. So focusing much more on the base level of interpersonal therapy, of making sure that the interactions are as close to what a person needs to see and experience, so that their interaction with someone who's not a professional also improves, may be the best technique of all, compared to any other deep psychoanalysis or anything of the sort. I think sometimes we and you've heard me say this, don't overthink it. If someone needs a translator, then let's use the doggone translator in the right way. Look the person in the eye. Don't say to the translator, "Hey, I want to ask them," excuse me, sorry. I want to say, "How are you doing?" and look the person in the eye. I don't want to look down at my phone or look at the translator and say, "Oh, I want to ask them how they're feeling today." There's a huge difference in that. And that's actually something that I've received training in that I'm not sure all professionals do. There is a huge difference in how you can interact with people when you're using other resources, while making sure that they recognize, I'm still talking to you as the person, not to the person that's doing their job as an interpreter, or whatever the case may be. Simple things like that are way more important than we give them credit for when it comes to therapy.
Really interesting concept. And I do like the notion of speaking directly to the person. I think that's a trope that we see a lot in media, that they end up having a conversation with the translator and so on and so forth. But I think it's important to humanize the person and understand that I may not be hearing your words in the language that, you know, I can understand, but I'm still having a conversation with you, that ultimately
Right.
these are your words being routed to me, but they're still your
Right.
words.
Right. Also, I want to add a few other things because I realize this is a great teaching opportunity. So let's go with someone who's a coma patient. Heaven forbid they have some level of cognitive impairment. Maybe it's a matter of someone who's developing dementia and is actually losing time, and they get easily agitated if they're put in a different environment. Like it's no longer their home, it's a nursing home, things like that. Some people still have levels of communication that we don't consider. So even if it's not verbal communication, the very next thing you do is write something down, show it to them. If they're able to respond to that, then you know you still have that level of communication. Can they write to you? Not only that, because people sometimes stop there. What if the person doesn't have written communication? Or to bring it back to the other things, what if they're illiterate? Maybe because they didn't learn it before going to jail, or because they came from an environment where they just simply didn't learn a language that they could write. Okay, then if they still have the ability to communicate another way, it might be with their body. And as a matter of fact, the most common way that someone is taught is to use their eyes. So how does that work? It's very simple. Eyes up for yes, eyes down for no. Or head tilted up for yes, head tilted down for no. So one of the most obvious and simple things for people that sometimes don't have what's considered to be obvious language, but makes them feel much better because you actually know what you're doing. You're not responding to anything else. Do you lift your eyes to say yes? And the second that you see a person doing the motion very rapidly, it's because they're excited because somebody for once actually got it through their thick skull that maybe there's a way to connect that most people don't even think about unless you actually have had the background and training for it. So these are things that you can research on your own. I cannot give lessons in this. I'm not 100% trained in this. I do not know sign language. I'm not pretending to be an expert in all this stuff. But I think we all get into this construct of if a person isn't able to just directly answer my question, then that means they can't communicate, and it's wrong. So there's a lot of stuff that people can do that we don't give them credit for. And let's be honest, the reason why it usually doesn't happen is because of lack of time and resources. So, man, oh man,
Well,
this is I'm really enjoying this because I didn't think I would be able to get any of this in any episodes, and the fact that I'm able to shoehorn that in is really cool.
Well, listen, I love the fact that whenever we can squeeze in a learning moment for our listeners, I think it's important, especially on some a topic that is not frequently discussed or not otherwise covered. Again,
I mean, picture boards. The idea that if someone, even if they don't know the vocabulary for something, if you point to certain things, point to something that's clearly a food source, point to something that's an object, common objects around the person. I mean, all of this is so basic that we never really think about unless we do this for a living. And yet we could make so many people's lives that much easier if we take that consideration.
Well, that's what we're about here on the show, is making people's lives better and easier in whatever format we can do that. This has been a long episode, and certainly one that I think has been fascinating and enlightening. I love these theme episodes. I love when Matt always drops these in to the list. And I'm glad we were able to get around to doing this one. I'm sorry it wasn't about the Health Avengers. We will coordinate with them. At a later time, we'll attempt to reschedule. So next episodes then, Black Adam, Hank McCoy, and in theory, somewhere in there, we'll get the Mental Health Avengers again. So those are some of the episodes that we've got coming up. A reminder, again, we're still taking votes for the award show nominees, capesonthecouch.live/nominees. Go there and vote. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Capes on the Couch. Our website is capesonthecouch.live. And you can email us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, praise, hate, what have you. Let me bring up a Podchaser so I can read a review of the show. Give me just a sec. My podcast. Reviews. All right. If you want to be awesome like Brian Wayne, who left us this review on Podchaser, 5 stars, always a 5-star show, great concept and extremely entertaining. And I know I just mentioned the email address. So if you email us if you leave us a rating and review on a platform that allows you to leave a rating and review like Podchaser or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, and you send us a screenshot of that rating and review to capesonthecouch@gmail.com along with your address, we will send you a sticker as a way to say thank you. Reminder that we've got a Patreon, patreon.com/capesonthecouch. If we hit $100 a month in patrons, we will start doing monthly film commentaries like riff tracks, Mystery Science Theater 3000 type stuff. Only bad comic book movies. And goodness knows we've got plenty of those to choose from. Cough, cough, Fantastic Four. So.
Which one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That is the correct response to that. Yes. So our next trade paperback review for our patrons is Fables Volume 1. So we will be getting that in probably next week. For the patrons. We couldn't get it done this week because we were anticipating that we were going to be doing Mental Health Avengers, and then that sort of got taken away from us. But next week we will get in the Fables review for our patrons. So I think I've covered about everything. So Doc?
You're out of time. You're out of place. Look at your face. That's the measure of man.
Wow. Wow. Rocky 5. The only good thing to come out of that movie.
Hey.
So thank you, Doc, for bringing that. I'm going to listen to that song right now as soon as we get done. For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Oh man, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yep. No problem.
Andy's giving us the Leonardo DiCaprio applause gif in the Discord.
Nice.
All right, you know the drill. Upload stuff. And
it's gonna be a couple of minutes. This is a long one.
That's what she said. Hi-oh. Yeah, same. So, all right, holy shit, it's 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
All right. On that note, I'm going to go to bed because we're going up to my sister's tomorrow for
nice.
breakfast. See her and the kids. Apparently, my niece is very excited for me to come over because she wants me to help her clean her room.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
I was like, okay.
That's your value as an uncle, huh? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
She said, I will tell him where to put things.
Oh.
It's beautiful though, because honestly, like, she doesn't think of me as an adult. I think.
Yeah.
I'm just like a playmate of hers. Because every time I come over, it's, Uncle Anthony. And then, of course, that's only if, well, not only if I'm there, but it's either me or it's Theo. And then Theo, come on. Come here, Theo. We have to do this. Theo, come here. She and Annalena came, the two of them came by a couple weeks ago, and she's going, Theo, you have to listen to your big sister.
Wow.
I was like, sweetie, he's not your brother. He's your cousin. Right. Your big cousin. But she's so used to speaking to her brother like that, and it's cute. The fact that she thinks of him as like a little brother. So
yeah.
If she's 4.5 going on 14. I swear if you ask her right now, it's like, do you want to babysit Theo right now? Yes, I can watch Theo. You and Cat go away. I can watch Theo. I'll take care of him. I'll put him to bed. I can change his diaper. We'll have a lot of fun together. Like if you ask her that, she in total earnestness, she will say like, yes, I'm Cat. I know I'm only 4.5, but I'm absolutely capable of taking care of a 17-month-old child. So,
wow.
All right. Well, we're going to stop the broadcast. Thank you to Andy, Seth. Brian was catching us for a little bit. And to everybody who watched. And the Dallas Stars beat the Lightning 4-1. So I am out a considerable amount of money. Not like considerable amount of money, but I bet like $20 total in prop bets on this game that Kucherov was going to score, the Lightning were going to win, and whatever. So Dallas is just fucking with my betting.
I'm gonna catch up on watching the Celtics and the Heat. It looks like they're in the third quarter. Celtics trying to get their first win of the series. Oh wow, Gordon Hayward's back. Okay, cool.
All right. So thanks everybody for